And what that means is to weigh out ultimately the pros and the cons of exercise. And as should be coming up behind me on the screen here, many of the reasons that you've heard again and again in the presentations tonight are on the one side of the balance. And if you need any more information, this would be my balance in terms of why I would want to exercise. On the flip side, the cons, maybe a little bit less TV watching, maybe some costs involved, some fears, fear of injury, for example, but the ultimate reasons, the benefits far outweigh the costs in my decision balance. And I would encourage you to think about doing your own decision balance when you're thinking about exercise. Another key strategy that we know works in exercise is to plan. And yet, every single person that walks through our door says, "You're not going to ask me to set goals and plan, are you?" Because we don't enjoy it necessarily. But I am telling you that it's one of the best strategies that we can do to help people exercise and stick to an exercise program. It's about planning, which means ultimately thinking about all of those barriers that might come up around exercise. Things like weather, things like time, things like the symptoms or the schedules around treatment, for example. How do you fit exercise into your day? And ultimately, if you can create a plan, which we call the if-then plans, so what you have to do is think about all the barriers. Think about if that barrier happens, what will you do to offset that barrier? So one example would be, if it's raining outside and I hate going outside to walk, I will, walk in my house or walk around the hallways in my condo building, walk up and down some stairs. So having that plan in place helps people succeed at moving more. We also know that you have to start small. And this is one of the challenges when we have exercise guidelines, when people come in and say, I hear that you need to walk a certain number of steps or do a certain number of minutes of exercise. And the reality is, you need to start with what you can do. So which means you have to start small, you have to build confidence, build that capacity, and continue on. So whether that's one step more tomorrow than you did today, or whether that's an extra bout of exercise in your day, it's important to think about these smaller steps that you can do to be successful in moving more. Around things like symptoms, around your schedules. And one of the other key strategies that we use is reminders. So if you can put your walking shoes at the door so that you literally have to trip over them in order to get out of the door, it might be a good reminder for you to move a little bit more. So there's lots of different strategies that we come up with as reminders, little post-it notes around the house, anything that can help you engage in a little bit more movement, we know works. Self-monitoring. So self-monitoring can come in all kinds of forms. It can cost very little money and it can cost a lot of money. So as you know, technology is advancing. We can wear fancy watches or have technology on us all the time measuring our activity levels. And that's great. But if we don't have the money or we don't have the desire to be that attached to some device, I'm just going to give you a couple of other strategies that we use in our lab. So number one, it involves the typical pen and paper. So you can literally write down everything that you do in your day and use that as a self-monitoring tool. You can see what you did, you can see what you purposely chose to do, and you can reflect on it to see how well you're doing. The other is what we call a paperclip test. And what that is that you can start your day with a certain number of paper clips in one side of your pocket, the right-hand side, for example. Throughout the day, as you choose to make small changes to your behavior, you can move a paperclip to the other side of your pen, so the left-hand side. At the end of the day, you can look at how many paper clips are in one side versus the other, and it gives you that visual of how many times you purposely chose to make a change in your behavior for that day. The other that works similarly is if you carry around a water bottle with you throughout the day. You can put a certain number of elastic bands on that water bottle, and every time that you move a little bit more, every time you stand up, every time you go and talk to someone rather than text them or email them, those little strategies, take an elastic band off the water bottle. At the end of the day, it's a visual that shows you how many times you've chosen to make a change in your day. So again, they lead from very minimal cost to high cost, but the key is to keep track, because if you keep track, you know how you're doing. The other thing that we focus on a lot in our lab is about emotions and emotional control, and this is a key barrier to exercise. Ultimately, what we want to be able to do is that if you can set goals, and that goal becomes unachievable to you, whether it's because of fatigue and pain symptoms or treatment schedules, or whether it's just something that you set that was unrealistic, what we ask people to do is re-engage in new goals. So give up on that one goal and set a new goal that is achievable. We can't keep beating ourselves up for those not being able to achieve those goals. Because ultimately, if we're trying to do something that we can't achieve, it reduces our level of confidence. That level of reduction in confidence then makes us feel crappy about ourselves, and ultimately, the downward spiral leads to us stopping doing whatever it is that we're doing. Now, there's a fancy term in our field called the abstinence violation effect. Say that fast 5 times. So what we say is the abstinence violation effect. You can sound really smart if you tell people about this tomorrow. But what it is it's the idea that if you don't exercise tomorrow like you planned, or for a week you don't end up exercising the way that you had set out, you say, oh well, too late now, I screwed that up, I'll wait till next year now to start again, kind of thing. So this is the typical New Year's resolution, literally. But what we want to be able to do is work around that. So there is no point in which you stop exercising and that you can't regain it. Any small steps matter. In our research, we see it all the time, that doing more exercise on a daily basis, regardless of whether there are breaks, whether there are times in which you can't, is extremely beneficial across all the spectrum of health, like you've heard tonight. So this is one of my favorite slides because we ultimately talk to people about enjoying exercise. And so, you put up this slide of the typical exercises. And what I want to highlight to you, on the left-hand side are medieval torture devices, and on the right are your typical exercise machines. And what I do want to highlight is that exercise is not inherently enjoyable for most people when you think of the traditional exercises. So the key is to find the exercise that you enjoy, because we know that the typical gym equipment, most people don't enjoy that. So find the exercise that you enjoy, and whether that is changing up the different types of exercise you do, changing up whether you exercise with someone else versus alone, whether you exercise in different neighborhoods or using different routes. It's about finding the exercise that you enjoy. In our research, and across, internationally, most cancer survivors say that they prefer and enjoy walking. Also, most survivors say that they prefer unstructured physical activity. Also, we want to target intensity levels. So if you do like to go for a walk, what we want to see is that when you feel like walking a little bit faster, use the environment to make that change. So what we used to say is, when you walk by every mailbox, add up a little bit of speed, and then at the next mailbox, slow it down. But because the mail service is getting dwindling, people are walking way further than they intended. But really, it's about using your environment. So walk from one tree to the next and speed up a little bit. Those are little simple things that you can do. We also have people tell us that when they listen to music, they walk faster during the chorus of the song, for example. And you can also change up different aspects as well in terms of the frequency that you exercise or the duration of that exercise. So once a week versus 3 times a week, or 10 minutes or 5 minutes versus 30 minutes. So changing things up, letting you enjoy, finding that exercise that you enjoy. And ultimately, we have this idea in our heads that walking is not enough. I get that all the time. Walking? That's all you're telling me to do? So I'm just pointing out here that walking is actually pretty complicated, if you look at it. So it also leads to a number of other benefits. So this is a slide that tells a great picture to me. This is, on the left-hand side, a human brain after sitting quietly. So this is what your brains look like now. On the right-hand side, this is a brain after a 20-minute walk. So you can't tell me that there isn't a benefit to walking when you see a slide like this. So the last point is really just to sit less, and we could have a whole symposium on sitting and sedentary behavior. But what I want to highlight to you is that moving a little bit more throughout the day, choosing times when you are sitting to be a little bit more active. Cell phones have really become great because we're no longer attached to a wall to talk to people. We can stand, we can walk around. Use these times to be a little bit more active in your day. And I'll just use this final analogy for you to show you the benefits of moving more and sitting less. So this is the first graph that I put up here is the typical person who would quote unquote meet physical activity guidelines. It's someone who generally commutes into work or wherever, sits around, goes out for that 30-minute to an hour walk or run, comes back and sits for the rest of the day. The next person that I put up here is someone who moves throughout the day. So never engages in that higher intensity guideline level exercise, but throughout the day purposely moves more and more. And what you can see is that if you focus on the area under the curve, the person who's just choosing to move more throughout the day is actually engaging in a lot more energy expenditure throughout the day. And so use this as a guide to think about ways that you can incorporate a little bit more movement in your day. So I will finalize my thoughts with this slide here to tell you that I wish I could stand here and tell you that there's a pill that's called exercise and that gives you all the benefits, but I can't. So what I would tell you is that you can use one of your empty prescription bottles to write exercise on it and place it somewhere where you constantly see it so that you can use that as your prompt to move more throughout the day.